I am so excited to welcome Greg Lunt because no one has researched the Quant Network quite like Greg. He's uncovered the different relationships, all the different partnerships, the power behind this digital asset. And we're uncovering digital assets that no one has heard of that are still in the early stages in the crypto winter. So welcome, Greg.
What's up, man? Thanks for having me on the show.
No, absolutely. I really appreciate your research because these digital assets are so opaque. Like it's hard to understand them, get our heads around them. But you've put in a lot of hours trying to understand the Quant Network. And what I've learned from you is that there's a deep rabbit hole here. It's really exciting. So like just to start off, what makes you interested in this asset to begin with?
Yeah. So when we think about moving from Web 2 to Web 3, Web 2 is kind of like this read and write internet where you can share data. You can share pictures, text, video, all these things across different networks. We've been able to figure that out with this, internet that we have now. With Web 3, basically what you're doing is not only are you allowing data transfer, but you're also allowing for value transfer. So in the form of, tokens is really kind of how this is manifested, where each token has a certain value and it can be tied to a real world asset, or it can be tied to a monetary value. It can be tied to some sort of value within a specific network in a utilitarian use case. But being able to actually transfer that value from network to network is something that hasn't really been solved yet because we're in such the early stages of this evolution of the internet. And so it's this key word of interoperability that gets thrown around a lot. And really all that means is like different networks being able to talk to each other. So again, in Web 2, if you have a cell phone that is built by Apple that is running Verizon wireless, how is that able to send a picture in a nanosecond to a laptop made by Dell that's connected to Comcast, or a Motorola phone that's connected to Sprint? It's because of interoperability. And again, that's the data interoperability, but with digital asset interoperability, that has not been solved yet. And so, at least not until what I believe, it has been solved through Quant. Basically, they've built something called Overledger. It's their product, and it's an API gateway. So API is an application programming interface. If you're familiar with anything in Web 2 in terms of connecting different websites or widgets, or taking data, for instance, like the Twitter API. If I want to say have a widget on my website that has a live stream, a live feed of like my Twitter feed, and I wanted to have on my website, I can plug it into the Twitter API and it'll pull the data in real time from Twitter's database. And so what Quant has built, and what we'll talk about, standardization, which is something that I think is really important in terms of, how this whole industry will be able to do the same thing. They've built APIs for digital assets, where now we can be able to plug in to different databases, regardless of whether it is a legacy database like Oracle or like Amazon, or a new database like these blockchains, and be able to share digital assets across networks using APIs. And so it's very exciting because the only way that we'll be able to reach mass adoption, scale this technology, and really have it as in real world use cases is if all the different networks, all the different systems can actually speak to each other and transfer that value.
Absolutely. So that's the technology. It's interoperable. Now, what I've learned is a lot of these assets will promise great technology, right? They're all super scalable. They all do this and this. But when it comes down to valuing these assets and understanding kind of where the upside is, it's the network effects. Like, is it being adopted? How powerful is the network? Like, are there big partnerships? And so where does that come in with Quant? Because the technology is great. They're promising great things, but is it being adopted?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. What you say about, every project is pretty much promising the world. And so a lot of it, to your point, does come down to, well, is it being used? Is it being adopted? And you can have the best technology, but if it's not actually out there and being used, it doesn't matter. So some of their bigger partnerships are with Oracle, like I mentioned, which they have about 450,000 clients that use Oracle databases, and they're doing a lot of work in kind of creating these no code blockchain app builders. So people are being able to tokenize things in their networks with no code. And so they've basically run on Overledger all of their blockchain interoperability. They're also partnered with SIA, which is now Nexi Group. Nexi Group has over 1,000 financial institutions that are all connected via their infrastructure, and that's being built again in partnership with Overledger and being able to move digital assets. So as banks kind of upgrade into tokenization and tokenizing all of the things that they have under management, they will be using Overledger to move those from database to database and system to system. And then another super large partnership that Quant has is with LAC which is the Latin America and Caribbean chain. And essentially what they're doing is they're pioneering regional blockchain infrastructure. So it's this, what they call public permissioned software or public permission network. And so if you think about getting a driver's license, that is a public good or public service, but it's still permissioned in that you need to go in and like give your information and sign up and pass a test. But it's available to anyone in the public so long as you get permission via, giving up some information. So it's not private, it's public permissioned. And so that's kind of what LACchain is. It's for 12 to 15 different Latin American countries that are all opting in to this infrastructure that's going to be for governments, for enterprise, retail use cases that are going to be connecting all these different countries, and it will be hosting the Latin American dollar. So this is basically, it's kind of a central bank digital currency. I'm not sure exactly how it's classified, but that's going to be launching sometime later this year. And so that's all again in partnership with Overledger and Quant Network. So they have a bunch of different use cases. Those three in particular is like Oracle's a lot of enterprise use. They do have some central banks as well, but a lot of enterprises. Nexi Group is a lot of financial institutions across Europe, Asia, Africa, and then LACchain is kind of a government, regional, multi-country infrastructure. And so just a lot of different avenues that they're kind of attacking that way.
It's just so mind blowing. Like you're so calmly talking about it, but like literally Oracle is one of the most powerful IT companies in the entire world. Fortune 500 companies are using it. So if you're saying that the blockchain solutions that Oracle is going to be providing to its clients will be powered by Quant, then in theory, their clients, like, I don't know does Disney, like huge companies like Disney and Home Depot or whoever, is going to be using the Quant network, right?
Yeah, so you're right. It is like a multi-layered effect because not only is it Oracle's 450K clients, but their clients as well that are building on their infrastructure, right? So, it goes pretty deep, and Oracle is also one of the fastest growing cloud infrastructures in the world. They're actually, we're the number one fastest, alongside like Microsoft and Amazon, and there was probably another one that I'm forgetting, but they're growing very fast, and that's because they're thinking so far ahead in terms of the blockchain. Actually,
they're definitely the future. Like I've used them in different companies. Many huge companies use it. It's just like mind blowing to me, this partnership. Like if a blockchain partnered with Amazon, it would make massive news. A blockchain partnering with Oracle should be epic, like huge. And so it's kind of hard because sometimes like these partnerships can fall apart. Have you seen evidence that it's still strong? They're still actually like relying on Quant and building with Quant. And I guess, do you know the time frame for when it'll all be rolled out?
So as far as I understand, it is already rolled out. To your point, there have been some questions recently around it because they were removed from like one aspect of the Oracle partner database. But then there was another part where they're still there. So it's like there are questions around Quant in terms of the way that they handle like transparency and visibility with just pretty much everything they do. And so we never have like fully clear answers on things. And so we kind of have to just read the tea leaves. So we don't have, one of the things about it is that it's a white label product, and meaning that people don't announce like, hey, we're going to go use Overledger all the time. Oracle did, Nexi Group did, LACchain did. But especially when you're talking about companies that are building on them, they don't even know they're using Overledger. So it's like we kind of have to watch what Oracle's doing and then be like, well, if it's a blockchain use case and that company's using Oracle, like there's a good chance it's using Overledger, but we don't have like full confirmation, like in writing, in an announcement, things like that. So that's where a lot of the research gets done, and there's a lot of speculation that happens. And so, that's part of the risk of the project, is that you're trusting your research maybe more so than in other places, but that's also some of the upside because it's not as obvious. So it's kind of that risk reward that you have to balance.
Yeah, obviously, there's some risk involved. Okay, so you have Oracle, which again blows my mind whenever I think about it because it's so massive. It's huge. And then the Latin American dollar, I haven't heard of that. Is that like the euro for Latin America? I haven't heard of them like bonding together around a currency or anything.
Yeah, pretty much. So you have the Inter-American Development Bank based out of Washington, D.C., and they are kind of the architects of LACchain, which has Brazil and Colombia and Mexico and all these different countries, and then there's some Europeans as well, like Spain, that are in this network, and they're building the Latin American dollar, which will basically enable like different enterprises to transfer money. It'll enable like welfare payments. It'll enable business to business transactions, things like that. So again, we're going to watch and see how that rolls out. I'm effectively thinking of it as like a central bank digital currency, although it's not put out directly by the central banks. We don't really have full clarity on exactly what it is. It's been announced that it's being built on Overledger and it's coming out in 2023, but that's pretty much all we know. And that it will cover, a variety of use cases from retail to enterprise to government payments. So that in itself is exciting, but we don't have a ton of more detail.
Right. And then you said the Nexi group. The last thing I read about the Nexi group is it the European Central Bank is talking to Nexi Group and Amazon and other companies about rolling out a CBDC for the euro?
Yeah. So that particular thing you're talking about, the digital euro is being rolled out over the course of whatever it'll be the next couple of years, and they narrowed it down to like 4 or 5 different use cases for it, and one of which they've basically partnered with Nexi to and I don't think this is even like they haven't decided on who they're using, but they have like a number of different companies kind of building out different use cases, like pilots for the use case of the digital euro. So Nexi Group's biggest strength is that they work with a lot of merchants for like payment processing. So when you go into a store and you swipe your credit card or whatever, that's a lot of this front-facing retail payment infrastructure, these merchant solutions. Nexi has, I mean, they're really the dominant player across all of Europe, and they continue to acquire and launch different products across like Germany and Croatia and Italy. I mean, they're based out of Italy. They basically own like 90+% of all Italian payments, retail payments. But they're growing in all these different countries. They're partnering with PayPal in Germany, like basically anything that goes through PayPal goes through Nexi, and also in like Denmark and a number of other Nordic countries and things like that. So they're growing very quickly in Europe from a merchant payment solution, and that's where they're going to be giving the digital euro and the European Central Bank a bunch of help in terms of implementing the euro in those scenarios.
Wow. And they're partners with the Quant Network, right?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. See, it's just so unbelievable, this rabbit hole for this asset. I mean, so it has network effects, it has technology. What the heck does the token have to do with any of this?
Yeah. So it's a good question. So Overledger is the product that these companies are using to build out what they call these multi-chain applications, or these MDApps. So multi-chain decentralized apps, right? And so what makes Overledger interesting is that instead of building a smart contract on Ethereum or something like that, you have to use Solidity, and then it works within the Ethereum ecosystem or the Ethereum virtual machine, however it may operate. When you build a smart contract on Overledger, you basically have access to whatever blockchains are connected to Overledger, whatever databases, whatever networks, and you can have settlements across different chains through that single smart contract. So that's the software, and that's what makes it really interesting and widespread. The token is used to access the software. So it's kind of like a separate layer. It's not necessarily integral to the interoperability itself, like the atomic swaps, the hash time lock contracts, all the things that allow for the digital asset to be burned and minted across different networks. What it is used for is from like a business sense that in order to even use the system, you need to acquire QNT tokens. And it's not done where the company needs to actually go buy QNT themselves. They can come in, it's very frictionless where they can pay in fiat, and then the quant treasury automatically converts it to QNT to open up the account and the payment channels for the enterprises or for the clients. And so, but in order to use the software, in order to have the bandwidth to make the transactions, build the MDApps, put customers involved into the smart contracts and the software that you build, it all runs on QNT. Every transaction breaks off a bit of QNT in order to use the system. So it's that payment layer, it's that access layer in order to get licenses to use the software, in order to make transactions on the system, uses a bit of QNT. So as adoption goes up, as usage goes up, as volume goes up, QNT, more and more QNT will be needed in order to satisfy that demand.
So there's a real supply demand fundamental. There's a use case for the token. The more the usage of the network goes up, which obviously we're talking about huge partnerships and real use cases, then the more the demand for the token will go up. So that's great. How about tokenomics? Is it a hyperinflationary supply? Is it fixed? Is it shrinking?
Yeah. So one great thing about it is that everything. So there's a lot of different information out there, but what I'm 99% sure is right is that there are about 14.88 million tokens, and that's a hard cap supply, and they're all in circulation. So there's no inflation coming. There's no surprises. There's no like, going to be some big mint or something, or we need to wait to see what happens. Everything's out there. There are some, some of it is not counted on certain token sites as circulating it because it hasn't left the team wallets yet from the original mint back in 2018, but they're in wallet, like they're out there, they're in circulation, quote unquote. They just haven't been moved. But the team already owns them. We know what the allocation is. And, so there's no more to be minted. They're out there. And so that's bullish when you have a capped supply.
Exactly. And a lot of what you're saying is bullish. I guess another important element when looking at an asset is the team, because it is centralized, you could argue, right? This asset. So how good is the team?
Yeah. So, the CEO, his name's Gilbert Verdian, and he has a very impressive track record. I would highly recommend anybody checking him out on his website or on LinkedIn. And he's worked for a number of central banks, a number of large enterprises. So he was, let's see if I haven't gone off this for a while, but let's see, he was the, Chief Information Security Officer of the Year for VocalLink, which is a MasterCard subsidiary. He was the Director of Security at PricewaterhouseCoopers for a year. He worked with the Federal Reserve. He worked with the Bank of England. He worked at Her Majesty's Treasury in England. A number of other ones that are slipping my mind, but he basically does like 2 to 3 years everywhere he goes and just makes like incredible connections and solves massive problems in security. And he has done that for the last 20 plus years. And then in 2017, he started Quant Network, and this has been his sole focus, and has been leveraging all of those banking and enterprise connections that he has in order to grow the demand and have Overledger be an integral part of all of these companies and all of these banks, escalating and being able to involve digital assets in the things that they're doing going forward. So, he's really the main guy. It's kind of like, they have other people that are great. Martin Hargreaves is the chief product officer who also came from VocalLink with Gilbert. Luke Riley is the head of innovation, who's a PhD and a very smart guy. So they have a number of people that are pretty impressive. They're all fully doxxed. There's no like anonymous stuff going on here, which is nice. These are people that you go on their LinkedIn, they have real histories. They are talking on panels regularly with massive companies and with central banks and at these big conferences. So it's none of like this random dev stuff. So there is something to that when, people put themselves out there, that they're more accountable for, what's going on in the system. But again, everything kind of comes back to Gilbert. It's kind of like this idea of like, if you're investing in Tesla, you're really like, it's Elon's game. There's obviously a million other brilliant people that are working alongside him, but it's about Elon and about what he can drive forward. And that's kind of how Gilbert is with Quant.
Right. So I mean this this sounds like a sponsored infomercial for Quant, but it's literally just asking the question and understanding this asset. Like it hits on every level almost. So I guess it's not sponsored, but like we're trying to understand this asset. What are the risks? There's always risk. We talked about how, a partnership could always fall through. It could get hacked. You never know. But like, are there any downsides to this asset?
Yeah, sure. So you had mentioned that it's centralized.
Yeah.
It is. And you will hear from people in the community, like some of the maxis and things like that. And they'll be like, oh, it's hyper decentralized. And I'll say like crazy things like that. This is run by a company. And what's interesting about it is that it's, they don't really consider themselves like in crypto per se, but they do have a token. So there's this like mindset in crypto of like this, anti-government, anti-central bank, decentralized utopia. That is not the philosophy of Quant Network. They are very much old guard, and they're trying to integrate this new technology and make for an upgraded internet that allows for digital assets to move cross network. But it's very fundamentally based around banks and around existing legacy infrastructure and those partnerships and things like that. So you're dealing with a company that has built a business model around a token, but it's not like a crypto company per se, if that makes sense. So the risk is that, they have to do what they say they're going to do. And we're very much, they have so far, and they continue to meet expectations, but we're very much reliant on Gilbert and the team to not do anything, random. So for instance, like I mentioned how, and again, this is going to like trigger some people in the community probably, but the QNT token is not integral from a fundamental standpoint for the interoperability itself. It is integral to the way that Overledger is designed in order to access and use the system. So it's like if the interoperability tech is here, there's this other layer of like the payment tech that lets you get to the interoperability. So in theory, the risk is that they could change the payment layer to be something else or whatever. So they could still maintain their partnerships that are based around the interoperability that they've certified, the Oracles, the Nexi groups that are like, oh, we really love what you've built from a technology standpoint. We want to keep using it. And in theory, Quant could say, okay, cool, we'll keep that, but we're going to change the way the payment works. We're actually going to move away from a token or something like that. So again, the risk here is that we are fully trusting a company to continue to do what they say they're going to do, the way they say they're going to do it. There are probably some legal ramifications to just changing it, maybe. I don't know that actually. I'm not a lawyer. But there are, they also are the biggest holders of the token. So it would be maybe not the smartest to just rug themselves. But you never know what can happen. And so just like any investment, there is trust involved, other than maybe like Bitcoin or Ethereum. So
I guess the SEC would classify it as a security, but who knows where all that's going? In my opinion, that's the only risk, but it seems like a long shot because they're getting so much pushback. But do you see regulation risk coming to the crypto space?
Yeah, I mean, so one good thing about Quant is that they're pretty regulatory friendly based on all of Gilbert's relationships and kind of the way that he structured things. He comes from a heavy regulatory background. So they've done things in a way that I wouldn't say. So this is how I think about regulation and security tokens, as you mentioned, is like QNT may very well be a security. just like I think most tokens probably are. I think they've gone out of their way to try to not be, and they probably won't be in certain jurisdictions, particularly in Europe. But when it comes to America, the first thing is that they didn't sell tokens during their ICO to American users. They don't do really business in America like that directly with retail. So there's less risk of that. They haven't paid exchanges to get listed. The Coinbases and the Binances have kind of picked them up on their own. At least that's what we've been told. And so they're not marketing to users. And so I don't think something being a security is like a death sentence in any way. I think that there will be some tokens that they go after. They're like, hey, you've been operating as an illegal security, and they will be fined a ton of money. And then there will be some that are like, hey, you're a security, you need to register and blah, blah, blah. And everything will end up getting registered and being, being compliant. And I think Quant probably falls eventually. Again, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm kind of just making this up, but this is my gut, is that I think they will eventually, if they are deemed a security, they will just go through the registration process and become compliant as a security token. And then that will be fine, and they will continue to operate as such. And so I don't think that that is like a huge concern. Generally in the crypto space, yeah, I think regulation is coming down, and we'll see kind of who comes out as the big winners from that. But I think Quant will end up being actually one of the winners there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's exciting because like what made Ethereum valuable was massive usage and good technology. Well, Quant in theory has all of that. It's just at the earlier stages of the awareness of it, which is very exciting. And so another reason I'm a big fan of yours is because you, like good investors, understand return on investment, right? And so it seems like you're big on investing in yourself, right? Do you have a philosophy around it? So I just love to hear from you, your philosophy on just investing in yourself and kind of hacking life.
Yeah, I mean, and crypto's been a good way to help facilitate that as well. Like when I first got in the space in 2017, I didn't really know what I was doing, and I got, I did okay. Some of it was luck, some of it was skill, but by 2018, we went into a bear market, and all of a sudden you're dealing with all these different emotions around large sums of money, and so you're forced to kind of figure out a lot of things. And in my case, it was learning more about me, learning about how I was feeling, about how I was reacting, learning about markets and all these types of things. So my self-awareness journey started before that. It was probably about 10 years ago. I was introduced to The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, which is basically a book about the ego and about separating, understanding there's a difference between yourself and your thoughts, and understanding that everybody operates with what he calls a pain body, and the stories you tell yourself, and being able to not like disidentify with the stories you tell yourself. And so these whole concepts kind of rocked my world. I was 26 and I'd never known that this was a type of thinking. And now today, over the last 3, 4, 5 years, like the present moment and being self-aware and all this stuff is kind of like become a little bit more mainstream. But this was like a completely unheard of thing as far as I was concerned about 10 years ago. Is definitely like, it didn't just get made up, but for me and for like mainstream awareness of that, it kind of just was like, whoa, this is crazy. So yeah, I've been on that journey for a while, just kind of like trying to improve myself, learn about controlling my thoughts and my emotions is something that I take very seriously, and that I practice every day. And I'm certainly not perfect at it, and I have shitty days and I have great days. But the quickest way to kind of navigate life successfully, I believe, is to feel the emotions and the thoughts as they come up, and being able to identify them and just be like, oh, I'm starting to get anxious, I'm starting to get nervous, I'm starting to get angry. Why? And then sometimes being able to control it, sometimes giving into the impulse. But the quicker you can shine awareness on those things, the quicker you can operate and have control of the things that you do. And so that's just kind of been like a core philosophy, and something that I've worked on, and something crypto has helped me with.
This is something I think people struggle with the most. It's like, you are not your thoughts. So a bad, depressing, negative thought will pop into someone's head, and they'll own it. They'll just like think it like it's them, and it'll like crush them. But control, like realizing it and realizing that's not you. You're just at a low frequency right now. You just got to get out of it, like break yourself free from it. Maybe you'll think a better thought later, but like don't be controlled by the random crap that flows through your head, right? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, you don't have to believe everything that you think.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you are not the idea, or you are not the thought. You are the awareness and the watcher of the thought. Right. So there's actually a gap between you watching what you think. That's what meditation is, right? When you sit and you just kind of notice things that start to come up, and then you'll go down a little rabbit hole, and you go down that story, and then you have to snap back and say, oh, that's interesting that I was just thinking that, but I just want to come back to presence and silence for a minute. And it's that idea of being able to watch your thoughts, and then because you can watch them, well, hold on, there's two entities there. It's like there's me, and then there's the thought, and I'm looking at the thought. So how can I be the thought? So if something comes up and it's like you're driving and someone cuts you off and you go, oh my God, I would fucking kill that guy. And it's like, no, you wouldn't. You just had a thought that you would kill the guy, but of course you wouldn't. And that's not you. So why, when you think like, oh, I'm a broke loser, it's like, no, you're fucking not. You're just thinking a negative thought pattern right now. And so, yeah, the quicker you can become aware of that, and that works on the upside too. You mentioned like the crypto winter and being able to triple down. Well, it's, sometimes it's harder in the crypto bull market to be aware of your emotions and thoughts, right? And that's the euphoric stage. People can lose a lot more money in the bull market investing at the top than they could, maybe riding it on the way down and things like that. So, I think it's always a time to kind of try and be as aware of your emotions as possible on the highs and the lows.
The other thing is like a lot of these thoughts that we have are programmed in us from the time when we're a kid, from just our surroundings, right? So you could be in the worst possible environment growing up. Like, let's just say you're abused or something, and you have this terrible self-esteem. Well, you're going to carry those thoughts with you forever, right? These terrible self-esteem thoughts about how bad you are. And unless you kind of learn how to control them, you're going to be a victim to them. But we all can control them. So what is your strategy for controlling them?
Yeah. So it's kind of like I was saying, like, it's the speed at which you can become aware of something coming up in you. And so whether you can get it before it happens, during it happening, or afterward, that's a process, right? So at first it's going to be like, you're going to get taken over by the emotion. That's just how we all are. Before we, as we start this journey. And most people in the world are living in that fog where they don't realize that there is even a separation there. And so therefore, when a bit of anger comes over them, or a bit of fear comes over them, or whatever that may be, anxiety and worry, that becomes their reality for X amount of time. And then only in retrospect can they say, oh man, I was really angry. I slammed that door and I broke it off the hinge. It's like, man, that was crazy intense. And they can look at it from a 30,000-foot view after it's over. But how quickly can you then get it to when it's actually happening? Can you catch yourself as you're about to slam the door and be like, this is a choice. This is a choice that I have right now. I am not the anger. I am deciding to let the anger take over. And then can you get even better than that and catch it before it even happens, where that person says that thing, and before you feel the rage coming up, and before you even stand up to go slam the door, you can take a deep breath and you can say, maybe I'm going to just separate myself from the situation, or whatever tactic that you might use in order to kind of just get a hold on it. And it's not to say that you should suppress your feelings or you should ignore your feelings. It's that you should be aware of your feelings, because the only way to have it pass through you and go away is to shine light on it. And that light is your awareness. And so the way that I quote unquote control my emotions is just to continually increase awareness by looking at myself, looking at, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? What are my intentions? What are my values? And how quickly can I catch things that happen? And even if they do happen, not being too hard on myself that, maybe it got away from me that one time or whatever it is. It's just understanding this is part of the process. But the more times I can catch it before it comes up or during when it comes up and not after it happens, the better.
Such a valuable thing to be able to control your impulses. So I mean, for me, it's almost like a game. Like, how long can I go thinking just perfect? Like, obviously, yeah, stuff will flow through your head. That's a question that comes up all the time. Like, well, it's there. Like, what do I do with it? It's like, be like water, just let it flow, let it resolve. And then you choose to do something positive, right? Or think something positive. And it's like, wow, I just went 12 hours like on point. Like, and then that's how you build that self-confidence up, right?
Yeah, yeah, you have to let yourself feel it for sure, and like you say, you begin to trust yourself more by, and you can
Yes.
put yourself into situations that um might bring up feelings because you know that you can control it, and you know that you're not going to, and even if it's not controlling it, it might be a tough word for some people,
Right.
but it's more just like not letting it control you, right? I think that might be the distinction.
Yeah, that's a great point because like I think what someone might try to do is resist, like get all like
Mm.
tense and like say, no, don't happen. Like even though it's just like the natural flow. So you can't be like resisting or fighting your own self. Like that doesn't work either.
There's a saying that I almost got tattooed on me back in the day, which I still love it. I just didn't get the tattoo. Was what you resist persists, and I think that that is 100% true. And it's this, again, back to what we were just saying. It's about shining the light on it rather than suppressing it. So it's like, oh, this is really bothering me right now. This is really pissing me off. Actually, I'm starting to get a little angry. Okay, well, instead of like just being like, all right, fuck it, let's just go with that, and like I'm gonna like act out, it's more like I'm gonna notice it. I'm gonna get angry and pissed inside, but maybe the better idea is to just go and take a walk. Or maybe it's to like put on some calming music, or maybe it's to tell the person, hey, this is kind of making me angry. Like maybe we should do something about this and communicate. And it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be all those things, but you still have to execute. Like you can't, not only can't you let it like control you and start acting out, but you also can't let it interfere with the things that you have to do. Like if you get up in the morning, you're not always going to feel 100%. Sometimes I wake up and I feel like, man, there's a couple things I have to do today and I'm not too sure about them, and I'm kind of feeling like a little bit insecure about them or whatever. But, maybe I wake up and I'm just like, oh, I'm a little bit tired and whatever. But you know what? I still have to go to the fucking gym, and I still have to like show up, and I still have to do that project. I still have to do it. So, don't act out in the negative way, but also make sure that you don't let it impact like your to-do list and the things that are necessary for you to succeed.
Oh, absolutely. So you're talking about just the higher self being in control, not like the baser animalistic pre-programmed impulses we have, but the higher self. And by that, you're taking action. Like taking action is a great way of conquering that lower self, right? Like just by waking up early, going to the gym and whatnot.
Yeah, discipline, man. I mean,
Yeah.
it's discipline,
Yep.
and Goggins talks about this. Jocko Willing talks about this. It's about, you're not always going to be motivated to do the things that you need to do. A lot of times you won't be motivated. You can't come from a place of motivation. I was actually just listening to Ed Milet talk about this, and I made a little video on Twitter about my thoughts on it, which was like, you can act from motivation or you can act from like inspiration. So motivation is basically like you're motivated to there's some goal at the end, right? It's like, okay, I really want to like get a six pack, or I really want to like lose 5 pounds, or I really want to like make this person like me, or whatever it's going to be, or I really want to like get this project done at this level because I'll get X from it. So you're motivated to do that, but you're not always going to have that every day, that dangling out in front of you. Like Goggins talks about, some people, they need that 5K or that 10K to train for, to like get up and to run and to practice. And it's like, you need to, like, the motivation, the purpose is you. The purpose isn't like the goal. The purpose is you. That's the inspiration. It's like, I look at who could Greg be in 3 years from now. That's the guy that I'm inspired by. And I aspire to be that person. And that's where I guess you could say the motivation comes from, but it's not really motivation. It's inspiration. I'm coming from like an inspired place. And that goes back to the discipline. It's like, you just have to do what you have to do if you're inspired.
Yeah, you're right. Discipline is absolutely key. It's like fundamental to conquering the lower self. And I agree with you. It's kind of like the feeling you get from like just winning all day, like spiritually and just being in control is like the best feeling ever. Like money, food, like nothing can compete with that. So eventually the person you are is like kind of the mission, like just being a much better person, right?
Tom Bilyeu says like life is about how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself. And I think that goes to what you're saying. And I think that I totally agree. Like the nights when I put my head on the pillow and I'm like, I fucking crushed today. Like on all levels. Like I did like multiple projects I knew I needed to do. I fucking went to the gym. I got my 10,000 steps. I ate clean. I had a couple of good networking calls and worked on relationships. Like I'm going to bed early, like, and you're just like, fuck yeah. And that is like, then that gives you a good sleep and you wake up the next day and you start again. So it's like, who said this one? Luke Belmar might have talked about this, where it's like there's like two like halves of your day almost. There's like the daytime and the nighttime. And you're trying to like those aren't the exact words that he used, but the concept is like in each like sector of the day or the night, the time that you're alive, you are setting yourself up for a successful next one. So like every time that you're in the day and you're living and you're doing things, you're preparing yourself for a good sleep and a good overnight. And then that overnight and that like morning and everything, you're setting yourself up for the back half and the nighttime of the day. Like, so you're basically in the afternoon, I should say. So it's like you're always doing something to make yourself as productive and as happy and as in line and aligned as possible in the next part. And so looking at life like that is like, instead of just living by impulse, it's like, how will this actually impact the next phase that's only maybe like 6 hours away or 10 hours away? And that makes it more tangible.
Yeah, totally. So what we're talking about is like the elemental way of thinking, getting that winning mindset, that elite mindset. That's literally what we're talking about. So what are you doing with this positive energy that you're fostering and this mindset that you're fostering? What's your mission?
Yeah, it's a good question. This is actually the first time I've talked about Quant in months. I kind of changed my Twitter game up and my content game up, which has been part of my mission, I guess you could say, was to kind of like do this research and spread this knowledge. And then I kind of have migrated away from that based on personal interest and just things that are like giving me energy and giving me, that I'm passionate about. So for the last 2.5 months, I've been creating content around this type of stuff, this personal growth and self-improvement. And my mission is really to help as many people as possible by creating content around the things that I'm learning through my advancement as a human. So I think anybody can do this. It doesn't have to be around self-improvement and personal growth specifically. It can be around anything that you're learning about, and then sharing that learning, right? Maybe you just listen to a podcast and you want to synthesize that podcast to save people time to learn those lessons faster and create content around that. Maybe you're learning to play guitar and that's something that's giving you a lot of passion and a lot of energy. And maybe you just film yourself playing to inspire somebody, as simple as that, right? But there's things that we're all doing to make ourselves better, or that we should be. And that is something that you can then share with other people and create this, what's the word? This like positive feedback loop, essentially, where you are doing great things for yourself and then you're sharing that with people, and that then comes back to you in the form of attention, awareness, money, gratitude, and then back again. So that's really, I'm kind of in this transitional phase where I'm trying to build my brand around helping people get better. And in order to do that, I have to get better and share like my authentic story around that. And so it's this cycle that I'm hoping to create within myself and my audience and my community to kind of, we can all get better together.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I love investing. I spend a lot of time on it, but the big game is like the personal development, because at the end of the day, if you're the right person, you're going to be making the right decisions financially. That's really what matters. So I'm with you. That's like the big kind of focus.
And I really believe that content is the key to success. And at this point of the game, the way that the world is moving right now, it's like you can do stuff in a bubble, and you don't have to be a personal brand or anything like that. But if you're trying to like build a business or help the business that you're a part of, or spread any kind of message about anything, you need to be able to create content on the internet. And that could be in video form, that could be in audio form, that could be in written form. There's all these different channels, all these different platforms, and it's about finding the way to create content around messaging that is going to help you or your projects grow. And that's actually, I'm starting a podcast around just that, around like bringing people on that can talk about their content and how they're using that to help themselves and others. And the things that you're doing, like having conversations just like this, and you're growing across all these different platforms, which is really inspiring. I know I need to get on more platforms than just Twitter, so I'm launching a YouTube, I'm launching like a TikTok, and trying to get things going like that. So yeah, man, it's awesome to see it. And those are the things that I think everybody, you can start small, but you have to start somewhere, and you have to start sharing.
We're still in the early stages of the internet. It's only like 25 years old, really, in terms of adoption. So it's changing everything. Getting out there is super important. So where could people go to find you? What is the name of your YouTube channel and Twitter?
Yeah, thanks. Twitter is Greg Lunt 27. That is really the hub for everything at the moment. YouTube is also going to be Greg Lunt. I guess so. It's youtube.com/@Greg Lunt. That podcast is going to come out at the end of May. So still recording some sessions to get a little bit of a backlog there, but I got some big guests, and just really excited to talk to people and learn more about how they're trying to grow and how to help people through content.
This discussion is for informational purposes only. Please consult a certified financial planner when making any decisions about investing. And do your own research before making any decisions. Investments are risky, and you can lose lots of money in them.